Hey guys, welcome back. I've got a special treat for you today. With all this stuff going on with the George Floyd case and just the unrest, all the protests and the riots, and it's just a bunch of he said, she said stuff. I have a guest with me today, one of my good friends, Kevin Bullard. He lives in Dallas, Texas. Say hey, Kevin.
Hey everybody, hope you're doing all right.
Now, I met Kevin through my mother-in-law, who has since passed, but she lived in North Carolina. Kevin lived in North Carolina with his family. He was so good to my mother-in-law. They were in a small group together, just a great friend. And she talked so highly of him that when we went to visit her, we had to meet him, and everything that she said was true. So, he is here as a friend. There's so many little side stories with all this stuff happening. Like I said, with the case, Kevin posted something recently that just shared things on his heart. It was, hey, you really don't know Kevin Bullard unless you've experienced these things. And he listed some things, and it just really tugged at my heart. So first off, Kevin, if you will, I would like you to say kind of the story behind what led you to do that. And then if you have any bullets of that jump out to you that you would like to just talk about right off the bat, I would certainly invite you to do that. But if I may, just because this could be, it's such a touchy subject, but you and I were talking earlier. I think we're good enough friends and we know each other's hearts that we're going to allow each other grace. And I can't hold you accountable for anything that you don't know or you don't feel. And I ask the same, that
Mhm.
I can't feel things that you can feel. So it would just give each other grace. But if I could I start off with a prayer? Is that cool?
Certainly.
Heavenly Father, God, just thank you so much for this opportunity to talk to my friend Kevin. Thank you for his beautiful family and his friendship in our life, just what he meant to my mother-in-law and just how he's a giver. He just pours into other people. He's such a servant for you and for your kingdom. And I am blessed to be able to call him a friend and blessed to be able to have him in my life. God, I just pray that you will guide our conversation as we dive into some touchy subjects and maybe say things that people are thinking or say things that are going to really tick people off. And I apologize for that in advance. But Father, I ask that you guide our words, you guide our thoughts, and let your purposes prevail. Because Father, it's not about me. It's not about Kevin. It's not about all the people involved. We are asking that you step in, that you intervene, and that you love people through us. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
And Kevin, if you want to add anything to that, I don't want to, pray and not offer you the opportunity to do the same. Your call.
I'm good.
Okay. So, like I said, you had posted something that shared a lot of personal things. And at first, when I read it, I really thought, because you see it a lot of times, that copy and paste thing, where somebody posted something really cool and it's like, man, that applies to me. So I'm going to paste it in there. But as I read it, I thought, maybe that's not the case. So when I was going to call you to talk about it, I thought, hey, let's have our conversation recorded in case other people would like to eavesdrop in on it. So please tell me about your post.
Yeah, so I put it up on this past Tuesday, which was Blackout Tuesday, and I've never put anything so personal online like that. I've certainly never publicly talked about race or my experiences. And I was trying to think, what could I put up? And I thought about different things, and they all seemed to be too volatile. Uh, and I just really did not want the added stress and drama of getting into a fight on Facebook, especially since I hadn't posted anything on Facebook in 9 months. And so I decided, you know what? Let me just write about me, write about my experiences. Some of them are happened some time ago. Some of them are more recent, as in like a week and a half ago, and some of them are just always ongoing. And just to tick off a few of the bullet points, I mean, one of the most recent ones is about a month ago, Satoya and I started cycling. And probably about, on a bike, probably maybe 10, 15 minutes from my house or some $1 million houses, and just riding down the neighborhood, riding down the street. And there was one day I was going down there and I'm thinking, especially in the wake of the shooting in Georgia with Ahmaud Arbery jogging down the road, I kept thinking, I need to stay on the street. It's broad daylight, and I just need to be careful. And, that's the thought that crossed my mind. Another bullet point, when my son wants to go out at night, I mean, this happened last night. He wanted to go to the gym. I'm reminding my son, here's what you do if you get stopped by the police. And in the post I referenced, it's an app that's through Siri Shortcut, where if I hit the button on my home screen, it texts my wife to let her know I've been pulled. It automatically starts my recording, and it texts my location to my wife so she knows where I am. And I'll just choose one more. There's another one, not feeling like that I am the lone voice speaking for all Black people. I think it's very easy. I think it happens both ways. I think Black people can think one white person is speaking for all white people, but that's an assumption. But I definitely know it happens where if one Black person says something or does something, then that is indicative of everyone within the race. And I can't stress how different Black people are from one another. And there is no quorum amongst ourselves on issues, including issues that have happened over the past week. And so those are just some of the items that I listed.
Sure. Yeah. And when I saw those, of course, a few of them really jump out as ouch, because I know you, I know what kind of person you are. I know your heart. And when I hear, and you didn't list some of the more damning ones or the more harsh ones that are real. It's not like I feel, you had a couple of I feel this way. Well, people can feel different ways, but you had some that were, this happened specifically. And that just, it sickens me to hear that. But we got a lot of people in America. We got a lot of people. There's bad people, there's good people. It's going to happen. And when it happens to good people, that sucks. But, you hear the stories, you always hear the prayer, God, why do bad things happen to good people? Well, bad things happen to bad people. Good things happen to good people. Good things happen to bad people. Every now and then, bad things happen to good people. And that is a very, very unfortunate reality in a fallen world in which we live. So yeah, I me personally, just empathetically to you as a person, and I consider you my brother, I'm sorry that you've experienced those type of things, that you can't just go out with your wife, enjoy a bike ride without thinking in the back of your head. Now, not that anything happened, because you didn't claim that. You didn't say anybody said or did or anything, but it's your feeling that you have. And that's sad, because I can say for me, if I went out on a bike ride, I probably would think maybe how hot it was.
Sure.
I wouldn't think things like that. So that's once again what we were talking about earlier on, is the filters that we live through. I live through a different filter. I can't feel things or think things that you feel. So right off the bat, I did want to respond kind of in person this way to your post and let you know, I'm so sorry that you've experienced and are experiencing those types of things in your life. Not that I can do anything about it, but in general, empathetically, human to human being, brother to brother, Christian to Christian, I'm sorry that you go through stuff like that.
All right. Well, thank you.
So when we were talking about, what would we talk about and what kind of format would be cool for in case anybody ever wanted to listen in and be interested in what we're talking about, I suggested to you that maybe you could have questions for me and I could have questions for you that I've
Mhm.
heard, that I've thought of, that I've wondered about. And you made a great point. You said, and you just alluded to it a second ago, you're not speaking for all Black people. You're not providing questions or a question from anybody but Kevin. This is,
Correct.
what you want. I say the same thing. I'm not representative of some race. I ain't that smart. I can't be in a position to represent any type of all guys or all middle-aged people or all white people or all straight people. I'm not in a position to do that.
Mhm.
All you can do is, this is me and this is you.
Right.
So I do want to open it up. You had a great question that you told me that you wanted to ask. I don't know if you want to do that off the bat, or if you would like me to start and ask a few questions. It's totally your call.
No, you can go ahead.
Okay. And this is for me. And when I see you in different cases, we're catching up with our family. We're talking about just life and stuff. And
Mhm.
we don't think about things like this. But in this particular conversation and in this ask, I had to dig and find out, okay, since we're talking about race relations, what race relation type of question would I ask you? And this is one thing as a dad. I've got 3 daughters. They're grown up. They've got families now. They're starting to have kids. I'm a granddad. I know how I raised my kids, and I know you're in the middle of raising 3 kids.
Mhm.
I'm curious, because I know, I see my experience through my eyes, but what is your experience as a dad raising 3 kids, specifically over the years, not necessarily the last couple of weeks,
Mhm.
over the years? What do you think your core teachings are about race relations to them?
Um, I think the first is them understanding, and this one doesn't really have anything to do with race, but understanding that they're believers. Of course, as they get older, they get to decide what they believe. But certainly, Cecilia and I are training them in the faith and wanting them to have a relationship with the Lord first, right? That's the first
Sure.
layer. And then with that, we don't, uh, gosh, how do I say this? We don't walk around the house and every other phrase or sentence that comes out of our mouth has something to do with, well, don't forget that you're Black. Now, I'll admit, as Max has gotten older and he's out more and he's taller than me, and I am talking with him about uh, racial matters more, just making him aware, particularly what to do if he's stopped by the officers.
Sure.
About comply first, ask questions later, keep your hands on the steering wheel. If you're asked to get your license, whatever, you verify that it's okay to get it before you do it. And so that type of thing, certainly talking about that. Also reminding him, all of my kids, but again, especially Max, since he's a male, just reminding him that he may not be afforded the same opportunities or benefit of the doubt as some of his non-Black peers, and so telling him, you're going to have to be on your P's and Q's. I'm not expecting you to be perfect. I told him this last night. I'm not expecting you to be perfect, but you've got to think through your decisions. And it's probably the same thing any parent is telling their kid, right?
Sure.
Make wise
Yeah.
decisions. But I am letting Max know that just because of our society, and not any one police officer specifically, because I don't know all police officers, but it is very possible that you may not get the same benefit of the doubt or the same fairness as others. And so just be mindful of that. But it
Right.
kind of goes back to the first thing of make it your aim to love Jesus and let your love for Christ compel you to do things that are right and to constrain you from doing things that are not right.
Amen. Very, very true. I had never thought about this question ever, and how white people raised versus black people versus Asian people, Latino. I've never considered that question until this week when you hear a lot of different things. And actually, somebody posed the question to me about, well, didn't you teach your kids when they were growing up about race relations? Didn't you teach them that? What did, it's like challenging me. And I had to think about it. I'm like, I don't ever remember when my girls were growing up talking about race in any way as far as a raising of, these people so and so, or these people or these people. I don't remember one conversation. It was more me as a dad, kind of what you were just saying, of course, biblical principles, and you want them to be believers and do what's right. But it was more of just the values of love your neighbor, love people, be a doer, be a giver, listen more than you talk, do more than you get, give more than you ask for, just the basic principles of life. And then once they have those tools, when they're out in the world and they're in elementary school and they start seeing, these people sit together, or these people sit together, and these are the popular kids, and these are the nerdy kids, and the whatever, the gamers, or whatever the categories you put people in, that starts clarifying to them through elementary and middle school, and then more specifically high school, and then even college, and they make up their own minds.
Right.
So I hope that I poured into them, sift people from good or bad, or I've got something in common. We like the same things. We like music. I like music. I like to dance. I like electronics. I like computers. I like web design. That's what, relationships should be based on. And I hope that I conveyed that to them. And I think when I see them as young people right now, young adults, I think that's how they live their lives. I think that they don't look at life through any color filter at all. It's not, these people that you always hear. It's more of, man, that guy cut me off in traffic, or this person was very rude to me in a store. It's not even a thought of what color were they. It's not even, who cares? They're people, they're human beings. And I try to live my life that way. So it's cool that I hear you say that, because I know we kind of, sync on that level. But piggybacking on that question, now that this has happened and you've got this big, event with the case and the 4 cops and just the wrong brutality that happened, and this thing is playing out, have your conversations at home changed? What have you specifically said now with maybe a little more emphasis? Maybe you tell your son, you see what I told you? What is it that you drive home to your kids now?
Honestly, they haven't changed. It's the exact same conversation. And if I could say this one thing you just said, and this is Kevin's thought, someone else may feel differently, but I think that folks in the majority, and in particular white folks, I don't know if luxury is the right word, but I would say at least, I think when your group of people have not been discriminated against, I don't think you really have to think about color, because your color really has not been an obstacle. It hasn't been an obstruction anyway. And so there's really no need to think about color. I was talking to a friend of mine this morning, who's a white guy, and he's saying, well, I don't go around thinking about that I'm white. And it's like, you don't have to, because it doesn't seem like that there is you don't have to worry about there being anything that could potentially happen or go wrong against you or be some type of denial because you're white. Whereas as a black guy, I think about it all the time. It's almost like this dual thing. At all times I'm thinking about, all right, I'm a believer. I am a male. I am black. And I don't know, you can tell me being a white guy, but I don't sense that you think much about being white. Whereas me being black,
Yeah,
it's
right.
constantly on my mind, and not from an inferior perspective, but one rather, I just need to be aware of my surroundings. I need to be aware of what I'm doing, and it's
Sure.
just kind of pervasive. So the conversations with Max haven't changed at all. If anything, it's
Yeah.
been even more of an emphasis. Um,
Well, it's certainly a good see I told you so. So if you thought, as a kid, is the "oh, dad, you don't know anything. You don't know."
mhm,
Well, now it's like, aha, do you want to be a George Floyd? Do you want to be under a knee gasping? So it's a good see I told you so kind of moment to make them really take your lead and your direction way more seriously, obviously.
mhm,
I would think so. But you're
mhm,
right. Yeah. And I think you're right. And I can't speak for white race. I don't think white people in America or white people in white other dominant countries think about being white. But and let's just flip it for a second,
mhm.
if I moved to Kenya, and I've been there twice, I do missions over there, and I love the people. What a amazing culture! I'm
Mhm.
in love with the people there. But if I move there, guess what just got added to my thought process? I'm
Sure.
white. Because
Yeah.
now everybody I see around me, I'm the minority. If I went to Japan and I see all these, black haired, brown eyes, certain color skin, and now I'm the blue eyed white guy there. I'm going to think about it.
Yeah.
Do they like me? Are they putting something in my food? I don't
Mhm.
know, because it's such an unknown. If
Yeah.
I move to Brazil, if I move to, anywhere, any of the Asian countries, or anywhere that I'm the minority, I'm assuming I'm going to think the same thing that what you just said.
Yeah.
Same thing in America with Asian people. I bet you if you asked an Asian guy, what do you think about through the day? And I bet you, like you said, what am I going to do today? I need to be aware of my surroundings, and I'm an Asian guy.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's on their minds because they're not the majority. So you could phrase this conversation right here as a white privilege, because you say, okay, well, then that's white privilege because you're majority white. If I went to Kenya, you got black privilege. If I went to Japan, then you've got Japanese privilege. If wherever you go, you're going to have what you would deem to be the most popular race, or the ones that seems to go that way. However, the whole term white supremacy has gotten this whole Jim Crow thing and the lynchings, and we hate people, and white people wake up every morning thinking, I got to go kill me, or give somebody, a black guy, a hard time.
Mhm.
I just, I don't see that, and I hate that narrative. I hate that cases like the George Floyd case. And we didn't say this off the bat, but I'm sure you concur. Just the quick, my quick take on George Floyd. He was, suspected of doing something with a counterfeit bill. He was arrested. Things did not go right. We don't know the whole story, but regardless, let's just pretend for a minute that he spit on the cop, he kicked the cop, he slapped the cop, he called the cop every name in the book and was laying down, flailing around. Once you get him subdued, which he obviously was, to put a knee on his neck till he's gasping and begging for mercy, they're still, for that long, all whatever happened prior to that is moot and off the table. So praise God, these four guys are now, convicted. Well, not convicted. They're arrested, and
Mhm.
they're starting to pin some pretty heavy crimes on them. And we didn't say that off the bat, but I want to let people know that that's the way I feel. That was wrong. No way around it. And I'm sure these guys are going to pay. So I think one of the questions I was going to ask you is about, personal experience with race or racism, and you kind of answered that with your post. But I do want to start spinning into, if you're okay, I
Mhm.
want to spin into the state of where we are right now with okay, this came to attention. It starts getting on social media. You see it. You see people getting upset, rightly so. You see the causes and the banners and the signs, and people are going out, rightly so. But then it starts going really bad. The rioters take over. These professional people start coming in with, their agendas and their rocks, and they're destroying things. If First off, I would like to hear, just kind of what you think about that. But then I want to follow up that with, and this is a heavy question, Kevin, and I apologize. If if everybody was a Kevin clone out there who is wanting to protest, what would that look like? What would they be doing? What would you tell them? No, this is what you need to be doing. Or do you even feel the authority to say such a thing? And I apologize for a heavy question. So it's two parts. What do you think about it? And what should they be doing?
Okay. Well, what do I think about it? Certainly not surprised by it. I think if you just look at, I think it's very easy for anyone to look at this and say, well, gosh, this George Floyd thing really got everybody going. But I think it's so much bigger. That's just, it's almost kind of like, you've heard expression, the camel, or the straw rather, that broke the camel's back. It's just one more thing. And if you go back and look at previous cases of police brutality, or you look at previous cases of, and if the black people did something wrong, then certainly they deserve to be arrested. But I think when you add in brutality on top of a regular arrest, or if you look at cases where it's unarmed black men or boys who are not treated the same as others who may get arrested. And then if you just look at just the history of our country, I mean, we haven't even talked about the fact that just our country just doesn't have a clean record where minorities are concerned, blacks and browns. I mean, things aren't right if there have to be amendments and then laws to try to give people equality. And so I'm not surprised that folks are protesting. I have no problem with protesting. Everybody protests, right?
Sure.
I think about the million moms who protested some years ago. There's nothing wrong with protesting. It's this obviously a protected right with the First Amendment. In terms of the looting and vandalizing and the burning, and this is an area where there certainly black folks disagree with this. There are some who say, well, you know what, it was coming. It's just that's what happens. And then there are others who are like me, but I'm approaching it from Kevin. And maybe this answers the Kevin clone part of your question. As for me, I have some friends who are business owners, and just looking at me, I'd be pretty ticked off if my business was vandalized, looted, if things were burned, and whether it's being done by professionals, whether it's been done by blacks, whether it's been done by whites or Hispanics, and there's all of that in there to folks who are doing these things. If you just look out on his face, it's illegal to break windows like that. It's illegal to steal. It's illegal for arson. So it'd be easy for me to sit here and judge the folks who are done it, or who are doing it rather. I know that I wouldn't do it, but I've heard folks say this, that it's just anger of displaced. And while I don't condone it, I can also say I'm not surprised, because when folks, you see this, when folks feel like that there is no other way for their voice to be heard, they resort to extreme measures, whether it be in rioting or anything else. You think about a kid rebelling. When a kid feels like he or she is not being heard by their parents, they'll go out and do something extraordinary to get the attention, to be heard, to make a point. And again, not saying that it's right, but it happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this is going to be, if I interject now, this is going to be through my confused white filter
Hmm.
when I start, diving a little bit deeper into this. So this
Sure.
is where I ask for grace, and
Sure.
I don't know what I don't know. Um, but the way I see it as I'm watching this and seeing it play out, I see black people who are, and I've got many black friends who I've reached out to. Hey, just thinking about you. I know this, is a tough time, and I just want you to know that I love you, and I'm really thinking about you and your family. Let me know, if you ever want to talk. So I've reached out to a few.
Hmm.
Some of them, right, and I can hear the anger. They're like, man, we're so sick of this. It's just another time and another case, and and I get that, and I think biblically speaking, anger is fine. It's not a sin to be angered. We can be angered. We can be mad. It's the sin that couples with anger. If you hit your wife, or if you break a store, if you steal this item, if you hurt somebody, kick somebody, kill somebody, then the anger is no longer admirable or, well, I see why they did that. No, you don't see why you did that, because now you've totally crossed the line. You got every right to be angered, but it's if on a very, very, very simple analogy. If
Hmm.
I have a sucky day at work, my boss sucks, nothing went right, and other employees are giving me a hard time.
Hmm.
I had a flat tire, and I come home and I kick my dog. That's a very simple analogy to what I see that's happening. The dog did nothing. The dog didn't give me a hard time, didn't give me a flat tire, didn't, whatever, make nothing go right. That wasn't the dog's fault.
Hmm.
So I kind of see that, and I know that's lighthearted, and it's not like at the level of what we're talking about, but it's on a simplistic way of talking. That's what's happening, because the very people, the small business owners, the people in the community are hurting, and they see this and they're like, this is wrong, and these cops need justice.
Hmm.
Let's get things back to normal so I can serve my community. Oh, I can't, because my windows are broken out and everything out of my store is stolen. So you see a lot of angry people hurting the people who are hurting.
Sure.
And then you see, the case where this 74-year-old retired black cop was just helping his friend protect his business, killed, dead, innocently, so they could just go in and loot the pawn store. And you hear the other guy, that guy was black, but this guy was white, was protecting his friend's store or his own store,
Hmm.
and he got trampled. And he's just kicked and kicked as the crowd yells F white people. What did that guy have to do with George Floyd?
Right.
So I think it's this group mentality where white people are guilty of seeing black people act this way and going, oh, black people, Bob, see what I mean? It's just like justification for racism or bias. Vice versa. When black people see a white cop, four white cops, I don't know if they were all white, but I know the main guy was white.
Hmm.
This white cop do this, and then it's like, oh, all white people, F white people. What is that all about? It's just like, what planet are we on? Where does this logic come from? This group mob mentality, and I don't know that I'll ever understand it. How the innocent, I think there's almost a dozen innocent people have died now in the last few days because of these riots. Do you think if we could wake George Floyd back up from the dead, who seemingly was getting his life back together, according to a couple of stories, wake him back up from the dead, go back in time a little bit, but then show him a preview of what's happening in his name? These 12, some odd 10, 12 people, businesses, all this stuff happening, I would venture to guess that he would say, what the heck?
Hmm.
This is not what I want on my name. This is not how I want to be remembered. I appreciate your anger, and I appreciate the cops getting due justice prayerfully. It hadn't happened yet, but we're all banking on that happening, that they get their justice and their convictions. But I just can't imagine him and all this in his name, supposedly, that he would, and I don't know him, I can't speak for him, but I would like to think that he was, a fairly decent guy. Of course, he had 3 previous arrests back in time, but it hadn't been for a while. And he seemingly, the story says, that he was a pretty decent dude. I can't imagine that happening in my name. If I were killed and all this, I would be like, time out, no, nada. I said that I'm going to be speaking that through a white filter. So
Sure.
I know you said, yes, people have, excuse me, people have the right to be angry. Absolutely. And then when you see all this other stuff, it's like, oh yeah, I can see why.
Yeah,
For me, I
and
can't see why.
and let me try to reemphasize what I said. I don't think it's right. All right, I want to make
Sure,
sure
of
that
course.
that's said,
Absolutely.
because Kevin wouldn't do it. I don't think it's right.
Right.
But what I was trying to say was, I know. I mean, I guess we also have to keep in mind we live in a sinful world, and I think about in Proverbs 6 where it talks about if a thief steals because he's hungry. I mean, it kind of leads. Maybe I should just read it. So I've been thinking about this because it kind of gives this to me. It kind of paints this picture of, oh, I see why the thief stole, but the thief's going to have to pay for what he did because it wasn't right. And let me read this right quick. Let me pull it up. If I can go to the right book here. All right, this is Proverbs chapter 6, verse 30, okay? It says, people do not despise the thief if he steals to satisfy his appetite when he's hungry, but if he is caught, he will pay sevenfold. He will give all the goods of his house. That's Proverbs chapter 6, verses 30 through 31. And I've been thinking about that verse, and it's this thing of, if a guy steals when he's hungry, it's like, oh, I get why he stole because he was hungry. Does that mean it was right? Absolutely not. Is he going to have to pay for it? Absolutely. And I think about that in terms of these people who are rioting, looting, hurting people, burning stuff, destroying stuff. That's not right. And I guess the point I'm trying to make is, maybe I should put it like this. I'm not surprised that is happening. I don't think it's right, but neither am I surprised. I don't condone it, but I'm not surprised. I'm not advocating for it, but dude, I'm not surprised, because when people reach some level of anger, and especially, and I say this, but there are some people who are spirit-filled who are out there doing it because they feel like they're justified in doing it. But our youth pastor said this, and I think it's so good. He says he doesn't see where in the scripture where Jesus said, well, you have to look like me unless you get to this level of anger, and then you can kind of like do whatever you want, no holds barred. And that's not in the scripture. But am I surprised it's happening? Not at all. And that's what I was trying to say.
And this is another through a white guy's filter comment. When I see this and I say, okay, as a black race, totally upset, totally angered, confused, what the heck? This has gone on too long. Like you said, the straw. So I get the anger, I get the protest.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say that they're out protesting, and when you get into a mob, you do things that you wouldn't do by yourself. So I understand that. So if I got, to the point where I'm starting to go outside of those bounds because I'm angered,
Mm-hmm.
then you see what's happening now, where it's just like crazy.
Sure.
From a white guy's perspective, I would say, and this is just a guess, I don't have any stats and nobody can prove me right or wrong.
Mm-hmm.
If we take 100% of the lawbreakers that are in these riots breaking the law, they're not just protesting, there's nothing against the law with that. You break the law, 100% of just that group of people, I would guess that only 20 or 15% or less are actually doing that because they're mad at the case and mad at racism. I would say, from my perspective and my filter, as I'm watching this play out, the rest of them are opportunists. they're not grieving George Floyd when they're dancing in the streets and laughing and grabbing top dollar items. That's not grieving. So with your angered heart and you're grieving and, oh, I'm so mad and I'm in a mob and, okay, I want to hit a cop car. Oh, I break the windshield out on a cop car, because that represents who's responsible. The small business owner, what the heck, right? They got nothing to do with this at all. I break a cop window. Okay, but when you start seeing this other stuff that's happening, it's like, whoa, whoa, whoa.
I would agree.
And there's no way to prove that. But I
Sure.
would say 80+% of the people that are breaking the law are not grieving George Floyd. They're opportunists.
Yeah, I agree. It's turned into that. Blacks, whites, men, women. It's a mixed group. So I would agree. It's folks who see an opportunity, and it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate on a number of levels. Obviously, for the business owners, it's unfortunate for the people who are being hurt.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate that all the resources haven't been used. It's also, I think, unfortunate that it takes the eye off of what the real issue is, which is the
Absolutely.
unjust and unfair treatment of Black and brown people.
Absolutely. 100% agree with that statement. Now, we're talking about police brutality, and you say the last straw. Just in general, okay, I know this one kind of raised the game up a little bit with George Floyd.
Mm-hmm.
So you can include it if you like. But just in general, with our cop system across the United States,
Mm-hmm.
would you say, because you hear, people chanting, and now they're on the news and they're saying it's systematic, it's a pandemic of racism within the society of police. What would your take be on just across the country? And we're just me and you. This is me talking to Kevin, and Kevin giving an answer, and there's no right or wrong answer. This is more about how you feel. But I'm just genuinely curious as a friend,
Mm-hmm.
through your eyes, do you perceive cops, not color, cops across the country as being this systematic racist? I'm going to wake up and my goal today is to hurt a Black guy. What are your thoughts on that?
I think my answer to that would be, I don't know. I mean, I think while systemically there are issues, while I think the way that um, some forces are set up where people may be able to do things and be covered, while I think that exists, I have no way of knowing what's in a person's heart when they wake up. Um, there could be some people who are bona fide racist and they do a good job of holding it. There could be some people who, when they get in a pressured situation, something just triggers, and maybe they weren't planning to do anything, but maybe something happens. And so, on a person to person basis, I don't know. I think it's like anybody else. Um, People are people, and you really don't know what's in their heart until they reveal it. To answer your question?
Yeah, I'm just like, in general, if you asked me, take every one of these recent cases off the table, and it's just in general, hey, LA, what do you think about cops? I would say that's a tough job. It's a
Absolutely.
underappreciated and underpaid job. I wouldn't want to wake up and do what they do and
Right.
have to deal with the situations that they deal with and not know if you're going to come home to your family. So
Absolutely.
it's a thankless, very tough, underpaid job, and very scary for people. I think that another thing I would say is a lot of cops are power hungry. They're arrogant. And that's just a perception that I've experienced
Sure.
personally, with cops pulling me over, or cops asking me about things. They seem to have an air of power, or air of, we might have a little cordial conversation, but I know it and you know it. I could take you down. it's
Right.
that, it's that I'm not going to tell you that. And we don't even need to say that. But you know, with this badge, I'm going to win. There's
Sure.
that air of that. And when I say that, of course there's cops that are seasoned cops that are like, yeah, the young guys come in and they're power hungry, and yeah, it's funny to watch people go through the stages of being a cop, and you know they mellow out over time and they realize that, you know, hey, we're just all people. We're trying to protect and serve. We're trying to do our thing. So you know, I personally didn't know that we've got over 800,000 cops in America. I didn't know that. That's almost a million.
Hmm.
And then when you think about that big of a community, that big of a group of people, then you say, okay, wonder how many of them are bad. Well, you got bad people, you got good people in
Sure.
every walk of life,
Right.
everything. So if you got those bad people in that 800,000 people community, how many things you think are going to go wrong in a year? Ooh, I would bet a lot,
Hmm.
because 800,000 people, probably half of them aren't really that great of people.
Right.
And then, so things are going to go wrong with every color, every gender, every straight on gay, whatever scenario you want to put. There's 800,000 cops. Things are going to go wrong because, like you said earlier, we live in a fallen world and things go wrong. We live in a sinful world. Things
Right.
happen. So, this is another, I apologize in advance for not knowing, or not, you know, maybe this isn't a tiptoe around sensitive question.
Hmm.
But when you hear, okay, there's 800,000 cops, you know that things are going to go wrong. And then I start thinking of the cases. Now, let me insert a thought. One case of police brutality is wrong.
Hmm.
One. If it's just one in a decade, one is too many. One is one too many, right? But the narrative, the story that we feel is like, oh my gosh, oh, oh my gosh, what is happening with the cops? They're all racist and they're just killing everybody up in here. You know, this, and I don't see that when I specifically look at, okay, this George Floyd thing sucks, and man, I hope these four guys pay the price, and I hope his family is taken care of, because they experienced a loss that they should not have experienced.
Hmm.
And then I look at, okay, this stupid two jackbutts in Brunswick, Georgia, who, you know, see this guy, they hear, okay, and all right, I'm going to take a detour just for a second, but bear with me.
Hmm.
And I might date you with this, Kevin. Do you remember the old Paul Harvey show where he would tell a story about this, and he'd tell a story, and then you would get the feeling a certain way, like, oh my gosh, you know, whatever the emotion is, he just drummed it up in you. And
Hmm.
then he goes, now the rest of the story. And he tells the rest of the story, and you're like, oh man, you know, that's
Right.
unbelievable. I didn't see that coming.
Right.
To me, that's another small analogy on a lot of these cases that happen, because you hear stories and it's like, oh my God, it's this. And then the case comes out, and the case goes out and it reveals all these other truths. And then the cop or the guy or whomever doesn't get that bad of a punishment. And then the crowd goes crazy because they believed the original part of the story and they
Hmm.
didn't know all of the story. So that's just a little sidetrack. These two jackbutts down in Brunswick, the little story that's going to start unpacking is there was 911 calls of a black guy going in these, you know, houses that were being built, stealing a few things. These particular two rednecks, and I'll call them white trash. That's just what they are.
Hmm.
They had thousands of dollars of fishing equipment stolen, so they're on edge. They're thinking somebody's in the neighborhood, you know, we're going in these houses and this, and he's a retired cop, so he's got a little vigilante, you know, kind of spirit in his blood. And then, you know, oh, there we get a call, hey, he's, you know, running through the neighborhood, let's go get him. So, hey, you know, grab your shotgun, Earl, let's go. And just stupid. It's almost like a bad movie, like a bad redneck, stupid funk movie. You know, that's what it's like. And they go out. Now, the rest of the story is going to start unfolding. They confront the guy. And I don't know if he said, it wasn't me, leave me alone. But somehow the guy Aubrey turned on him, and it became a one-on-one confrontation where he grabbed the barrel of the shotgun, and now it's a confrontation. So we don't know, and it'll come out in court. Was it, I'm not listening to you stupid rednecks, what you got, and confronted him, or he, ran for his life, and he finally was at the last gasping moment, and now he's got to fight back because they have him cornered. I don't know, you don't know, and we won't know until the case happens. But my point in that is that these cases that you hear that get so ginormous, there's always the rest of the story. Now, I don't think there'll be a rest of the story with George Floyd because you see pretty much all of it on video, praise God. With Aubrey, I think we're going to hear things. With Trayvon Martin, you hear the case went. They had the Department of Justice for 3 years with a special prosecutor trying to find out and not pin it, but trying to make sure that this Zimmerman guy paid the price, that it was his fault. But even 3 years, the Department of Justice, they couldn't prove it. It was self-defense. That's how it came out. That's where it landed. And then everybody gets upset because they don't, it didn't fit the original part of the story. So when I hear this Paul Harvey thing, I think when I hear these stories, like the white kid, remember the white kid that had the red Make America Great Again hat on, and he's sitting there, looking at the Indian guy, and we get the back end of the story, and it's like, oh, that white, privileged, stupid kid, he's so cocky and da-da-da, and you get all upset about it. And then you hear the rest of the story about all this taunting that was going on and how the Indian guy was an activist and he was in their face. And then this other, unfortunately, black group who was screaming these god awful obscenities to these kids, these little high school kids. So he was just saying, he didn't say anything, but it was, I'm not going to participate. I'm not going to be in this. I'm not going to engage. Even Whoopi Goldberg on The View, when she saw the rest of the story, she's like, why do we keep falling for this? Why can't we just hear the rest of the story first before everybody gets all upset? So when I see that, and this is once again the white filter, and I apologize, please give me grace. But when I see these little cases, I'm like, just wait, let justice play out. Because if it's wrong, there's a way likelihood that it's going to be proven in court. Now, granted, yeah, the white guy can afford a better lawyer and the cops can. So there's that, and there's wrong, and there's things that go wrong. Please don't, let people watching this put words in my mouth. I'm just saying that it's really making sure you're still there because my battery's a little low on my phone. That I just wish that, let's get upset, let's do this, but let justice play out. We live in America, and we let the justice system play out. Now, hopefully these protests and the anger level is going to speed up this thing with George Floyd, and he's going to get these, guys convicted in a quick, expedient manner, and it doesn't go through the system so slow. But what is your thinking on that when you look at, okay, all cops are a racist narrative and they're holding us down and, we're being hunted out here. And then you hear these, maybe, and I said, one's too many. Hear my words, one's too many. But you think, okay, maybe these 3 things, these 5 things, these 10 things out of 800,000 cops, these 10 things. And then most of them have a backstory. Even when you start listing the big ones that you hear, there's always a backstory. And it's like, they're not out hunting people. It's just you were at the wrong place at the wrong time doing the wrong thing and you fought back. That's kind of what the narrative is at the end of the story. What do you think about that? And I apologize for ranting for that little spiel, but what do you think about that?
So my thought would be, first of all, if somebody's chased me with a gun, 3 people coming after me with a gun, you better believe I'm going to fight back. And if fighting back is wrong and gets me shot, then I just did the wrong thing. But I'm not going to let somebody point a gun at me and try to shoot me, period.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah, I would run first because I'm not going to win. It's me against a gun. So
you're not going to outrun the bullet.
I would run until I'm in a corner and I have to fight back. And I don't know what the situation was. I don't know what they said. But those guys are going to pay.
And they should. And you know what? That one spoke to me because he's a runner. I'm a biker. there's a house not too far from me where they're building some townhomes. I was in there one day just sitting in the homes under construction. They're open. There's no locks. There's no signs, stay out or whatever. So, that spoke to me. Like, if he went into this house, if he didn't break in, if it's open, as I understand it sounds like, then, and he didn't take anything, the rest of it will come out. But that one spoke to me because it's like, well, maybe I should not walk into any more homes under construction because it's no telling what can happen. And if somebody's coming after me in trucks and gun, I'm by myself, you best believe I'm going to fight. And if I did wrong by fighting back and get shot, then you know what? I'm just going to go down knowing that I did what I thought was right by trying to defend myself. If you've got a gun and I don't know you're coming after me, I don't care. Yeah. I didn't instigate it if you're coming after me with the gun, and I'm going to fight back. In terms of the rest of the story, what I think about is, Parv's right. The rest of the story, it's so easy to say, all right, well, there's 800,000 cops and things are going to go wrong. Of course, right? Nobody's perfect. Systems break down. You've got bad apples in every group. You've got great apples in every group. But to me, the rest of the story is not even so much when we hear what comes out in the court proceedings. Yeah, that's part of it. But I think the rest of the story is it's so easy to take a single case and pull it out of the entire context of, I think, the plight that Black people have faced in our country. And I know, and I don't know about you, but I know that, because you haven't said this, but I know that there were someone said it to my brother recently. There are those who say, well, you know what, you're talking about something that happened 400 years ago. Well, you know what? Yes, there was slavery, and yes, there was Jim Crow, and yes, there were laws that were against Blacks. And I don't care how you spin it. If at any point you are suppressing someone or oppressing them, and even if you start creating ways for them to catch up and you start trying to create ways for there to be some type of equality, I think that needs to be looked at, because there's not going to be enough laws that are going to right every wrong as long as there are people in the world, because people can easily skirt the law. And so to me, the rest of the story is you've got to look at what's been. It would be great if there was a way to completely overcome all of that. I don't know if it's ever going to happen. That's why, to me, I think there's a lot that can be done on this large level, right? This macro level. But to me, it's more about the micro level. I can't change how society is going to look on the whole, but I can certainly change how my white friend looks at Black people, what he knows about Black people, what they experience. And it's just hard. It's too easy to separate one thing that happened from all that has happened. And it's not that you live in the past, but the past certainly speaks to what is now. Shakespeare said it, past is prologue.
Sure. And it's like you said, when you mentioned 400 years, nobody that's alive today was alive then. Nobody that's alive today was a slave or owned a slave.
Right.
That's so far back. So if we wanted to go through history and just start picking things of, ancestrally, this happened, at what point does that stop and it becomes their thing and now this is our thing? Because if you look at the opportunities for success that Black people have and are having, where you've got doctors and lawyers and people throughout entertainment and sports and medicine, all these other things, that would not have happened even 60 years ago, much less 460 years ago. But now today, the sky's the limit. So it as a white guy, it frustrates me to see all the opportunity, to see, these celebrity or athlete Black people sitting on their multi-million-dollar bank accounts, trying to preach about oppression. That's tough for me because I don't connect those dots. And I know they're not speaking for themselves.
Mhm.
When they, and it's that the group thought of we, we. It, what you said earlier, there's so many variations of every color, every gender. There's no black people. There's that black guy and that black guy and this black girl. There's no black people, because you got some that have born and raised all their life here. You got some that just came from England, some that
Right.
came from Kenya, some that came from Nigeria. They got so many different various backgrounds. There is no, black people, so to speak. So as a white guy looking back into it, it's just tough that this whole group mentality of we're being held down and we're being oppressed. It's because I don't experience that. But going back to the first thing you said, I trust you, I love you, I know you as a friend. So when you say this is my reality, this is what happens, that makes me hurt and it makes me empathize more. And I think as we wrap this conversation up and we start talking about, solutions or what can be,
Mhm.
I think it starts with the individual. It starts with the person on the inside, the person in the mirror, and who you deal with, and to empathize with each other and hear each other out. And I think that part of that is grace and the ability to say things without fear of condemnation or this wrath of, see, you're just exercising your white privilege. Because there's probably a lot of things that we've discussed that I talked about from my perspective, because I'm ignorant and I don't know things, I can't feel things I can't feel, that if I were to say that to certain other people, I would probably lose their friendship. What do you mean you thinking
Very
like that?
possible.
I can't believe that you would. But that, it's open dialogue. And I would like to start, like you said, why we're talking right now with the man in the mirror and the people that I deal with. But part of that is the ability to give each other grace, to understand that I can't feel what you feel. It's hard for me to understand. Likewise, you can't feel what I feel, so you don't understand. Maybe some of
Mhm.
the things that I say seem calloused or harsh or ignorant because I just don't know what I don't know.
Sure. Yeah.
What would you say are some solutions to throw at this?
The first I would say is, and I've told my white friends this. I told one guy this morning, and he said it was very helpful. I know that there are so many white people who feel guilty, and they've either been made to feel guilty or they just have this inherent guilt. They feel bad for being white. They feel bad for the opportunities they have. They may feel bad for any type of privilege that they may have. And my thing is,
Yeah,
you don't have to feel bad for being white. You don't have to feel
right.
bad for having opportunities. You don't have to feel bad for having privilege. You didn't make yourself white. And so
Mm-hmm.
don't sweat the fact that you're white, and certainly don't feel ashamed and don't feel guilty about it. I
Sure.
think the thing is, use any power you have, use any authority you have, use any leverage you have, use any opportunity or privilege, what have you, use it to help someone who you see or sense is being treated unfairly. Um,
Mm,
it doesn't help me as a black guy for my white friends to feel guilty. I don't want to be around somebody who feels guilty to be around me or feels like they owe me something.
of course.
No, if you empathize with my reality, then use whatever resources and network you have to help make my reality be more even,
Hmm.
to be more equal to what you experience. Um, there are so many white people who they've earned what they've got. Not everybody was born on third base, right? Not every white person was born on third base. Majority of white people hit triples and got there, and
Yeah.
they earned what they have. You don't have to feel bad for what you have, and don't let anybody make you feel bad about it. The question is, are you able to use your resource to help others? And that's not only for white people.
Exactly.
That goes for me.
Anybody.
I mean, whether a person is black or white, if I have access to some person or to some resource or to some network, and there's somebody I can help, then it's my duty to help them. That's just the right thing to do. So that's
Yeah.
the one thing I'd say. And then here would be another part of the solution. Well, I guess it ties in with the other. Just do something. Um, be honest, and certainly, I think the more we all learn, the more we seek to understand, the more we listen, and the more we allow our assumptions to be challenged, then I think the better we become as people, and the more helpful we can become to others. It's so easy for us to look at this and say, "Oh, well, this is about me." And we're people, and we're persons, and so we can't help but see our reality. But I think there's another part of it is if I'm only saying, well, this is what I experience, but I don't take the time to see what anybody else is experiencing, whether they be black, whether they be white, then I am totally self-absorbed, and I am good to nobody except for me. And in reality, I'm really not even good to myself, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so I think another part of the solution is, yeah, this is how I experience the world. Let me see how somebody else experiences the world. And I may not, you can't disagree with my experience. You can't disagree with my reality. You may disagree with how I interpret it, and that's fine. But I think it's incumbent upon us all to just look beyond our own needs and see how we can help somebody else with where they are. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, very much so. And I like your statement. Be open to having your assumptions challenged, um, because I think that a lot of people do have assumptions, or they bought into a way of thinking, and then when somebody says, "Hey, that's just not true," this is actually the truth behind that, or this is the rest of the story, to be okay with that and listen and seek the facts. Don't jump on these assumptions or narrative because it's this mob and they're telling you this, and maybe somebody wants you to think a certain way. Do your
Yeah.
own research, do your own facts. Let facts do your speaking, not feelings. We can all feel, we choose our feelings. Now, people can affect us and they can make us lean one way or the other towards how we feel, but how we respond, how we feel is totally our choice. So if I gave you a list of, I feel blah blah blah, I feel blah blah blah, we say, well, why don't you feel something else? Because you decided to feel that way,
Mm-hmm.
because that's your thinking, that's in you. So you can control your feelings and actions. We can't control other people's actions, but we can control our own. So be open to that. Before we kind of wrap it up, my phone is like barely hanging on with battery. So if it dies, I'm gonna charge it up and then call you right back for the last second. But hopefully we can land the plane. And I've done probably more talking than I should have. Did you have a question for me, or want to land this with the Kevin's great solution for solving America's racial problems?
If I had the solution, I would. I wouldn't be here. I'd be somewhere international doing something. Um, is there anything else? I guess so. Just a question for you. Aside from talking to me, what are you doing to make matters better, LA?
That's a great question. I think I alluded to it earlier when I said we can only handle the person in the mirror. So I control my actions, how I feel, how I think, how I respond, how I love, how I serve, how I give to other people, and not seeing, any bias, any color, just people are people. Now,
Can I say
when
something
my,
about that right quick?
sure, absolutely.
Because you said it earlier, I completely forgot. This is something I'm maturing in. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's completely okay to see color because,
No, yeah.
because
No,
God made us
what I meant
different
by that
colors
is a
and different
bias.
experiences. Yeah, where
No,
bias is concerned. Gotcha.
I actually saw something that you either said or somehow I got that from you about it's okay.
Yeah.
And I think that if we were to just take a little detour for a second, yes, Martin Luther King Jr. said, "Don't see my color, see my character."
Right.
And And I get that, and it has its reasons, and it has its
Sure.
purpose, and it has its thing. And yeah, that's right. We should be colorblind, and we're all human beings. We're all made by God, and we're all equal. That's the way we should live. Not to discount the other conversation of, man, we got cultures, and
Right.
there's an Asian culture, there's a Latino culture, there's a Mexican
Correct.
culture, there's a Black culture. That's to be celebrated. I
Exactly.
think as God created the church as members of his body, the church is Christ's body. Some are hands, some are eyes, some are mouths, some are feet. You hear that the church is God's body. I think likewise across races are God's body, because there's different races that are just naturally gifted in different things. And I don't think that's accidental.
Right.
I think God designed us that way to be working together, because you can do something that I can't do. I might can do something you can't do. A German guy might can do something that I can't do. We're
Right.
all built with DNA wiring to certain purposes and certain things. And sometimes that crosses across race, and we can identify,
Right.
wow, that race is really good at this. I think that's God's design to make us dependent on each other, to make us need each other and
Mhm.
appreciate each other. So I think, we see color in that way. So,
And
I
I
was
think
going
that's,
the MLK route
yeah.
of don't see color, but yeah, I know exactly what you're saying.
And that's
So
probably,
back to the answer. I didn't mean to
yeah.
interrupt you.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, back to the answer. I can control me, how I act, how I respond. When my kids were of 18 or less, I was pouring into them. I was teaching them. Like I said, we're looking at good and bad and serve other people and love your neighbor and biblical principles. There was no ever a life lesson of, okay, when you're around this color of people, this is what needs to happen.
Mhm.
It never came up. And that might be, my filter. So I'm doing, me, I'm raised my kids that way. And
Mhm.
then when I'm out in public, when I interact with you or other friends or any color of friend or any situation, I always try to conduct myself in a manner that Christ would be pleased, that I love. And I just don't, I see good and bad, and I see aggravating people and helpful people, but I really don't tag that onto any kind of color. Now, as far as, am I an activist? Am I calling my, governor and, hey, you need to make sure that this law passes? I'm not that kind of person. I'm not an
Sure.
activist to get out into community or grab a sign and protest, because I don't want a rock to hit me in the head. I don't want to be a part of that. I'm a homebody. I like the
Right.
safety of my home and my family. I'm not one to go out there and do that. But if there's a cause that I believe in, social media, I'll talk about it. My YouTube channel, I'll talk about it. If I, had a T-shirt with a hashtag, I'll wear it proudly if it's something I believe heavily enough in. So me personally, that's just kind of my limited answer to the question of what do I do? What would I do?
Gotcha. Well, I like the fact that I mean, that's where it starts. Uh, Before we can do anything big, it starts with us. I think about Andy Stanley there in Georgia with you. He's like, do for one what you wish you could do for all. It's all very individualized. I think
Yes.
about the starfish story with the grandparent and the grandchild walking on the beach. Kids throwing in starfish, and grandfather's like, it's too many. You're not going to make a difference. Kids like, well, it made a difference to that one. And I think
Mm,
that's where it starts. And maybe the
that's
best place
right.
to land this plane is what you said. And this is specifically for Christians. We are part of God's body. We are parts of the body. And while we may not agree with every part of the body, or certainly don't think the same way as every part of the body, Christ did not give us permission to ignore parts of the body.
Right.
It's his
Amen.
body, and I believe he's going to hold us accountable. And we have a
Absolutely.
responsibility to one another. And this goes black, white, white to black, black to
Yeah.
Asian, Asian to black, and all. It's all the way around.
Yeah.
But particularly where there are parts of the body that are in peril, I believe that we have a responsibility to cover
Yeah.
one another.
Well, it's
And
to that which you did to the least of these, you did to me.
there it
Case
is.
in point, right? There it is. So, brother, it's always a pleasure spending time with you. I know this was a little weird conversation because nothing like you and I have ever had before, this kind of stuff. But I like being free enough and open enough to say things, to talk things, and it's not an agenda. It's not a I win, you win.
Right.
I'm gonna beat you with these facts. I don't think we're that kind of people.
I
So
am not.
it's healthy to me to have the freedom, because like I said, I've got many friends that I could not have this conversation with because it would just get too testy, and they would be putting words in my mouth that I'm not saying, and they don't know my heart. And when I say things, they might go, "Oh, well, you're saying," no, I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying what I said. The words that just came out is what I'm saying.
Right.
So I appreciate that. So just kind of wrapping this up, some little quickie practical things. I think honestly, as we move ahead as a country, yeah, people to people, everybody's responsible. Let's get past this. Let's get these guys convicted. I think cops ought to be required to have chest cams. So there's no question. There's no bystander trying to get a better angle. And God bless the public that can film stuff now. But we need to share everything. We need to have as much data as we can. I think that security cameras ought to be required throughout communities and throughout areas so that there's never a question of what happened. It's this, tit for tat, and this is why this occurred. And then really open to the public what the facts are. Don't let narratives be creative and blanket statements of all black people are this or all white people are this. Let's get the facts. Let's get what really all cops are this. No, let's get the facts, because there's recorded data that's true. It's not like, oh, I think or I thought or I heard. No, there's facts. Every day there's new facts that come out. But really, another little tidbit, I thought, if you've got a cop station where you've got black people, white people, Mexican people, I think that as buddy, it ought to be required that you're with another cop of another race. Because I think there's a certain accountability in
Absolutely.
that. So you wouldn't, whenever you can avoid it, don't have two white cops together. Now, there's some towns that are just predominantly white. You can't do that. You don't have the mixture.
Sure.
But where you can, there should be accountability. Put these two people together. Not only are they going to breathe a brotherhood and start understanding each other's cultures and as people, but it's going to be healthy. That's just little things like that. I think we're going to get through this. I think we're going to get out of it. And I pray that we do. But even though this is a fallen world, we have a lot of people, and bad things are going to happen to good people. That's just a unnecessary, sucky way to end the conversation, but it's just going to happen. There's no remedy to that except Jesus, right?
Right. Well, look, you open up in prayer, so how about I close it?
Absolutely, and I pray my phone stays alive.
I'm quick with it. Heavenly Father, thank you for your love. Please help your love to live through us. Help us to show you with the way we live. In Christ's name, amen.
Amen and amen. Thank you so much. I love you so much. I'll be certainly praying for your wife.
Thank you.
For a quick recovery, and for your kids, that they be strong, that your young men make good decisions out there in the world.
Amen. Thank you. Please tell Melinda said, hey.
I sure will. All right. Love you, brother.
All right. Love you, LA. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.